It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
All right, good morning. Scott Luton here with you live on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. We are broadcasting live today from MODEX. You might can hear it in the background, the largest supply chain trade show in the Western Hemispheres. And it's being held right here in Supply Chain City, Atlanta, GA. On this episode, we are speaking with a small roundtable of supply chain technology leaders. We're going to be discussing how everybody scans, everything is scanned multiple times as, of course, it courses through the supply chain. But maybe we're still doing it wrong. I don't know. We're going to learn a lot more. On a quick programming note, like all of our podcasts here at Supply Chain Now, get our podcast wherever you get yours from, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. Okay, looking forward to an outstanding panel today. So let's introduce them. To my right here, starting with Paul Günther, co-founder of ProGlove, right? German maker of wearable scanners for global industry. And Paul, I understand that y'all were just cited in a Wall Street Journal article. Pretty cool.
Oh yeah. That was amazing. When we started the whole thing, I never thought like at some point we're gonna be featured in the Wall Street Journal.
It's like a landmark thing. So great signal, and looking forward to learning a lot more about ProGlove. You're joined by Tracy Hansen on my left here, president of ProGlove's U.S. operation, which is headquartered in Chicago.
Correct.
And Tracy, you also serve as the company's global chief marketing officer.
That is true.
God, those are two big hats.
They are very big hats.
So looking forward to diving more. I'm just going to move this in just a smidge there. Mm-hmm. There we are. And then Justin Griffith, over to my right here, yes, Chief Technical Officer at StayLinked, which, from what I've been told, is the most advanced terminal emulation solution in the entire world.
Yes.
And we're going to learn a lot more about that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Paul, Tracy, and Justin all here exhibiting at MODEX. We're just getting started here on the first day. Well, we say just getting started. I don't know if y'all been setting up for 4 or 5 days like we have.
Yeah.
But it's all coming together. All right, so as we talked about in the pre-show warm-up, we want to give our audience a chance to kind of get to know you all a little bit better. I've already gleaned a couple of details from our little warm-up as we were getting a sound check. So, Paul, starting with you, tell us about yourself, including where you grew up, and give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing or your education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I grew up in Germany, in the southern part. There's a lot of automotive industry, so I always wanted to do something with automotive. So I studied management with technology, and while I was a student, I worked for BMW in their factory as a tour guide. So I learned all the technologies and also why it's so much about efficiency. And then years later, that helped me a lot when we came up with the idea of ProGlove.
Nice.
To have this background.
Wow, to have that back with one of the world's finest automotive companies.
Yeah.
Very cool. And of course, being able to tour guide the operation, you probably had a unique opportunity to kind of see it end to end, right, which is really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So there was basically from the bare steel, until the ready-made car will leave the factory, everything. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, so shifting gears, let's go over to Tracy. So Tracy, where did you grow up, and give us an anecdote or two about you two?
Absolutely. I grew up just outside of Boston.
Okay.
Right near Route 128, which for those of you who remember was the technology hotbed in New England.
Okay.
So I was really obsessed with technology. I was obsessed with international business. So in graduate school, I studied ISO 9000, which for those of you know is really the heart of supply chain and making sure that things are quality controlled and that you can operate efficiently and effectively. So I've been doing this for a long time.
Outstanding. And so you said outside of Boston. What town or borough or what?
All right. Go Tigers. Newton North.
Newton North.
Newton North.
The pride of Newton North. Awesome. Okay. So let's shift over to Justin Griffith with StayLinked. So same question. Where'd you grow up with Justin? And give us the goods on your upbringing.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Orange County, California. And that's where we operate out of as well. And I've been with the company now 16 years. And it was a family company. It was started by my dad almost 30 years ago.
Nice.
And when I first started with the company, it was one of these scenarios where he sat me down, and it's terminal emulation. He's saying, "Okay, don't get too comfortable here. It maybe has 2 or 3 years left." And 16 years in, kind of the conversation has shifted around. There's all of this great innovation and great technology, but it has to find a way to be integrated smoothly with these entrenched systems. The fact that I still have a job now is a testament to that.
What's old is new again.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah.
And so we're going to learn more about Stay Linked here momentarily. But in the meantime, I'll stick with you, Justin. Tell us about, so you've been at the same company for 16 years. Did you do anything prior to, has this been your
Literally, so this was my first professional job. I was doing retail. So that was a unique experience, too, because I saw sort of the end game of where a lot of this stuff gets executed, where the customer actually picks it up. But yeah, I was using the technology I'd be running the software for years later.
Wow.
All those years ago.
And your dad started the company. That is
Yeah.
really cool. So you got a sense of kind of the entrepreneurial side of the tech business, right?
Yeah, and also sort of this how a company adapts, So before doing this, we were solving Y2K, and fixing back-end systems for Y2K. So it's funny how technologies and how companies kind of adapt to the new whatever the concern is. Yeah.
Roll with the punches, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul, let's come back to you. You already kind of give us a sneak peek of some of your early professional journey, being working at the BMW plant and touring groups through there. What else prior to your role here at ProGlove?
Yeah, so aside from my job with BMW, I worked a lot with electronics, just out of interest. And then realized how quickly I was able to build prototypes out of hardware and put some software on it, and then that was amazing. So you could just ready-made order all these parts. You had some idea, and then you could prototype it and then test it basically with your users. And that was also super helpful then for the ongoing journey later than with ProGlove.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about what triggered, what caused you to found the company in just a minute. But Tracy, before we do, and before we learn more about ProGlove and kind of its background, what preempted your current role? Give us a little sneak peek of that.
So right after grad school, I went and worked for a startup called NetApp, based out of Silicon Valley, and was there for 12 years. My job was to help ensure that we were ISO certified, and from there, really grow the company. We went from 200 people to about 14,000, about 20 million in revenue to about 6 billion. So it's pretty nice.
So you did okay.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
And then Andreas Koenig, who is our CEO at ProGlove, he was there the same time I was, and we paralleled. He was running Europe, and I was doing marketing over at NetApp towards the end, because we got certified way early on. So when he tapped me about ProGlove, and he said, let's do this again, got a chance to meet Paul and the other co-founders, and just said, absolutely, let's do this.
All right, so if I can throw a curveball.
Sure.
When that type of growth that you just described, there are some unique dynamics around that. And some of our listeners that are in the entrepreneurial field, or maybe they're with fast growth companies, it resonates with them, and others, they may be new to that type of growth. If there's one thing that you could hang your hat on that is really unique to that type of global growth, what would that be?
Patience.
Patience.
Because it's all about the people.
Right.
And it's so dynamic, and you have to understand what motivates people. You have to understand what moves them forward. And when there's stress in the organization, when you have that type of hyper growth, you need to be able to have patience and bring people along with you.
Well put. And it's almost like a counterintuitive answer, but it makes perfect sense. Okay, so Paul, let's switch gears and come back to you, because really kind of one of the feature stories here as part of this conversation in this episode is the ProGlove story. So tell us about what prompted you to found the company.
Yeah, so during my time at BMW, I figured out, okay, there's all about efficiency. So there was one guy, for example, at the assembly line, he was taking kind of adhesive from a dispenser and then put it in the car. And then when there was a little bit more time, he put it everywhere on his clothing, on his jeans, everywhere. So he was faster with the next car. So that was something you could observe everywhere. That was one thing. So the efficiency I saw there. And the other thing was, so wearable devices. So in the industry, you're already used to have a vest, safety shoes,
Right.
or also gloves. And so at some point we thought, okay, if we can make a smart glove for the industry that helps the worker to do its job easier, because like there you do it like the one step you do 1,000 times every shift, then that's a big help for the worker and also for the manager, because they're always looking into how can we save some seconds, especially when we started, and with the automotive industry, they're really interested into keeping the automotive industry in Germany and being efficient. And so there is always someone like looking into squeezing out seconds. And
Can I interject for 1 second? It's always fascinating, as one of those pallets fell off the machine, it sounds like. It's always fascinating to hear a technology company, a technology trailblazer, talk about the people and start with the people in terms of why you found that. That really sticks out. You know, it's not an everyday occurrence. So I can really appreciate that. And so let's talk about currently. So we kind of got a sense of why you founded it. Give us an example or two about the current application. You know, where can we find ProGlove helping operations today?
Yeah. So we started in automotive, like typical assembly line. Every part that you basically build into the car, you want to document. So you need to scan it. And usually you do this with a handheld scanner, like a pistol scanner. But like you need to grab this first. You will lose it somewhere on a pallet. And so that costs you quite some time. Also, it's not ergonomic for the worker. These things are quite heavy, these guns. So we integrated this scanner. We made it really, really tiny, integrated into a glove, so you can wear it on the back of the hand, and then just trigger it in your natural movement. And that not only helps in the automotive industry on the shop floor, but like in every warehouse. So that was then the second big sector for us. Like everywhere where you order something, someone needs to pick this and wants to document it in an efficient manner and run through a warehouse. And these are then our users.
I like that. So I once collaborated with a lean sensei, Mark Preston, and he always said when he toured operations, look for elbows, especially production operations, because if you don't find elbows, to your point, you find folks reaching and you could throw out your back or it's just not a comfortable work environment. So as you described that, I could almost sense how much easier that would make my role, especially if you're on the production line for 8 hours doing tough work in automotive where there's just a little bit of pressure, right, to keep things moving. Before we talk more about Stay Linked, what else would you add to that, Tracy, that application?
Absolutely. So ProGlove really applies itself well in transportation logistics, warehouse and distribution centers, retail, and we're actually seeing quite an emergence in healthcare.
Really? What? So through any of those industries you just mentioned, what's the easiest application to kind of share that our listeners can kind of picture, you think?
Oh, let's see. Let's talk about warehouse and distribution. I just had the opportunity to visit a customer last week and walk the floor, and we could see exactly what you just described. People reaching deep into the shelves to pull boxes out or bending down low to scan items. And so when you think about the amount of movement that a human does that is unnecessary but demanded because of the technology they're currently using, you can visualize putting ProGlove in its place, and instead of having to bend down constantly, just scan with the click of a button, or instead of having to reach deep in, be able to just pull things out because you're not having to orient your body in a way that's unnatural to accommodate the technology. Let's make technology accommodate the human.
I love it. You know, so we've got a couple of dogs at home. We order dog food all the time. One of my least favorite things to do is go to the grocery store and buy the 40-pound of dog food because my dogs go through it in 3 days. And while we get it online now and it shipped straight to the house, if we've all seen how the retail environment, it's a brick and mortar, adapted to those guns, right? So that customers didn't even have to pull those things out of the buggy. Yep. You know, it just makes it easy. You know, adapt the technology to the worker or to the consumer.
Exactly.
I love it.
Well, look, can we just take that dog food analogy? That dog food, that one bag was probably scanned about 20 times.
Sure.
It was scanned when it was delivered to the warehouse. It was scanned when it was taken off the pallet, when it was put on the shelf, when it was pulled off the shelf, when it was put on the truck, when it was boxed up, when it was shipped to you, and when it was taken off the bus or off the truck.
Everybody scans. That's right.
Everybody scans. So let's talk about how we might be scanning incorrectly, and what are some of the things that we can do to address the much needed scan in a way that meets the needs of the supply chain.
I like it. It makes so much sense. We're all looking for a way, and we're going to touch on some inefficiencies and whatnot. We're all looking for ways to gain just a couple of things out of our global supply chain, right? A few less touches, certainly a lot less empty miles, and more and more. But anyway, stay linked. Justin, let's bring you back into a conversation here. I really want to, two things. I really want to understand more about what the company does.
Yeah.
I'm not a technologist, so when I was doing my homework around terminal emulation solutioning, that is above my pay grade.
Yeah, it's an obscure cog in the
and
machine.
That's right. And then secondly, kind of, if you could speak to the alliance that y'all must have as firms.
Yeah. So terminal emulation, right now the prevailing kind of info is that, as they mentioned, when you're scanning all of this stuff, generally speaking, you're using some sort of mobile device with a built-in scanner, and about 70% of the time that's being used in conjunction with the terminal emulation software. So it's the software that presents the screens from a warehouse management system, telling you what boxes to pick and what dog food bag to grab and that sort of stuff.
Gotcha. So the scanning technology, in terms of the physical technology, connects with the emulation solution to help guide the work that takes place.
Exactly. Yeah, we'd be the thing telling you, oh, wrong box, or you've got enough here, move on to the next work.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And then, so that is, you're speaking to the second question I had in terms of how y'all work together.
Right. Yeah. So again, for a lot of these workflows, apart from just doing basic sort of data entry, the grand majority of the industry has moved toward this scan validation model. Everything's barcoded, so you don't, less error, more efficiency. So again, one of the huge opportunities we're finding in the logistics space especially is the more efficient you can make that scan and the more accurate you can make that scan. And now with some of the new form factors they've got, the better you can alert users when there's an exception, a condition, an error, or something like that, the more efficiency you get, the more boxes out the door.
And who's not looking for that?
Exactly.
Everybody is, right?
Exactly.
Now, did I stumbled across something maybe with my conversations with some of y'all's team members here. Y'all have got a big announcement in the works.
We do.
And I don't want to preempt anything. Folks are going to, this is going to be a few weeks away from when we publish the episode, but is there anything you can share, or we want to hold it back?
No, let's talk about it. So let me start, but Paul, you jump in, okay? All right. So this week at MODEX, we are announcing our newest scanner. It's called Mark Display. And what you've heard us describe so far is a scanner on the back of your hand. Before Mark Display, it was a solid scanner, so there was no display. And this week we're announcing the ability for us to actually show the person, the frontline worker, data right there on the back of their hand without having to go access a tablet or other device. So, Paul, do you want to share some more?
Yeah, so there is the tablet or the phone running Stay Linked, for example, still in the equation, but you don't need to look at it all the time. So you will start your process in the morning, but then you can put it away. You can store it. And then all the information that is critical for the job you're currently doing, like which shelf I'm going, how many do I need to pick, what do I need to pick, that is then all right in the back of your hand. And so you don't need to pull out any other screen or look at any other device. And then, like together with Stay Linked, we can implement this into your warehouse application.
Love it. And you already have a couple of sites that you're targeting for initial deployment. Y'all probably can't share too much there, but
can't share too much, but we do. We have a couple of customers who are putting this into production right now. They are looking at making their frontline workers more efficient. The device itself is Featherlight. It's about 1.4 ounces, so it barely weighs more than a feather.
Yep.
And it is allowing them to find operational efficiencies, give their employees real-time data right in context to what they're trying to accomplish. Paul is exactly right. It will tell me where I need to go next, how many things I need to pull. It will alert me if there was a mistake made, or it can actually be blasted with additional information if I need to alert my team members to different things out there on the floor. It's an e-ink display, so it's really crystal clear and
Such
clean.
a good idea. That's such a good idea.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And it just, it really is a powerful tool for us. And the early adopters are finding that this is cutting down even more seconds.
Yeah,
And every second counts in the supply chain.
Absolutely. Well, it seems like, and maybe not in the first deployment, but there's beyond the straightforward operational gains that this type of technology allows. It seems like you've got some cultural questions and some gamification. It seems like there's all kinds of versatility that
There's
can
all
bake into
kinds of fun you could have with this.
Very cool.
It has a very similar kind of value proposition, like we were talking about it inside the office of all the value proposition around heads-up display, that this is a hands-up display, you know, and everything that you could do and alert users to, but with the addition of having the built-in scanner and all the efficiency you get out of that. It's
Love
just
it.
awesome.
Yeah, pretty exciting. So I want to transition. I don't want to leave any important detail about this big announcement. I think it's going to be a couple days before you really roll that out here at MODEX, which is to pick where 35,000 of our closest supply chain friends are at the largest supply chain trade show in all of North America. Pretty cool place to roll out that type of announcement.
Yep.
In the same week that you get covered by the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to have to get y'all's autograph before y'all leave the booth here. I want to switch gears, though. I kind of want to broaden out just a smidge. And there's three things that we all identified kind of pre-show in terms of general themes of the supply chain landscape, the supply chain environment, the global business environment we're in, efficiencies, workforce, and IoT. And we can probably all, based on the first part of this episode, kind of make some linkages, right? But I want to kind of go around the horn here, and Justin, I want to start with you. When we think of efficiencies and we think of this type of solution, we think of Industry 4.0 against the backdrop of what is got to have it and got to have it now.
Yeah.
What is that? What comes to mind?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting topic, especially over the last couple of years, because again, we're sort of facing it from the perspective of, okay, how do I integrate it with a system that was not engineered to consume this?
Right.
You know, it wasn't engineered to speak to a display, or wasn't engineered for a lot of these new technologies. So that really jumps out to us is, okay, how do people use these new technologies that there's obvious gains you get from in a way that they integrate quickly and in mass? You know, so that's the biggest thing, because for us in our industry, we're measured more than anything by how many boxes get out the door.
Right.
And unless you get more boxes out the door, you don't get integrated.
Well, and you know, there's not naming names, but there's story after story of providers in the e-commerce space that are looking at those per hour production efficiencies per day. There's a ton of pressure there. You know, to what you're speaking to. Paul, I want to get you to weigh in. When you think of efficiencies, what else comes to mind in terms of the opportunity in this e-commerce era that we live in?
Yeah. So when we started a company in 2015, there were a lot of other players also looking into the industrial space. The problem with most of them were they were super complex to integrate and to get running. And so if you have some gains after a project of 2 years, like, your customers are probably not interested. And with our solution, we had something they just could go to the assembly line, plug in, and then instantly could integrate it into their process and save these 4 seconds. And that was super helpful to us. So you don't need to have a super complex solution. To solve the problems of your customer, it's really important that you can have something that is easily to integrate, and then they can get started and will see some benefit, and not only after 2 years or so of using it.
Simplicity is a beautiful thing, and everyone doesn't quite appreciate that. I certainly do, and you know, we've talked a lot on our previous shows. Let's keep the small things to be small things, right? And the mountains that have to be mountains, we'll tackle that, you know, in due time. But man, simplicity is just so underrated. All right, so Tracy, I want to bring you back into the conversation when it comes to efficiencies. What else is the opportunity here?
I want to build on what Paul was just talking about, because as we introduce the Mark display, we're introducing a cloud concept as well. So how do we do data analytics and give intelligence to the organization that is using Stay-Linked or ProGlove? And similar to what we did with the hardware, we've been striving to do the same thing with the software. We want to make sure that it's as easy as possible to make it as efficient as possible so the benefit of it is received immediately. And with all of the data that we're able to collect now and give back to the customer, they're able to see where their workers are on the floor. They're able to understand the spaghetti drawing of the foot pattern in the distribution center. And with that visualization and with that insight, they're able to gain even deeper efficiencies, not just from scanning, but how everything is actually organized and set up. So really critical.
I want to go back to something you just shared and not put you all on the spot, but I think a lot of folks, so we have a lot of folks still in college looking to break out into supply chain, and they listen because they want to get a sense of the global market and who's doing what. So when you say spaghetti diagram, I love that. It might have made some of our listeners hungry. What is that? What is that?
If you can visualize an AutoCAD drawing of your shop floor and seeing where all the panels are laid out and where all the bays are, you can actually visualize where people are walking, where they're touching, where they're stopping, and get heat maps and footprint, basically. And we call it the human digital twin. And that human digital twin gives you a real analytical approach to understanding how your operations are actually set up.
Data is powerful, and those spaghetti diagrams, and especially in warehousing and fulfillment environments, manufacturing environments, are so critical to making life easier for the workforce. If you've got something in the wrong place at the end of the facility, why not move it, right? The other thing you spoke to, Tracy, and I'll get y'all to weigh in on, regardless if it's equipment like ProGlove offers or if it's all the technology systems you find at MODEX, you're speaking to that immediate return because we're all looking to get that payback period in as short time frame. Speak to that a minute, Tracy.
Sure, absolutely, and guys, jump on in. But there's a sense of immediacy. If I'm going to invest in something, I understand that it might take time to fully realize the return on that investment, but start showing me immediate improvements.
Yeah.
So we've geared our organization and our partnerships to ensure that as we're working with our customers, as we're talking to them, that they're able to see immediate results, even if there's a long-term strategy at play.
Yeah,
love it. Okay.
Yeah, that would be kind of the important thing. We're seeing a huge focus and a huge shift towards people buying platforms that grow. It's not necessarily that they want the end game right now. They just want to know they can get there, and they want to know it's a well they can keep going back to get better and better stuff out of.
Great point, Justin. So you just talk about people shopping, and a lot of that happens online these days. To mention the big A, all right, Amazon, they're still running a pretty healthy business and moving into different operations, and it's of course it's fascinating, right? Despite some of the things we talked about, is kind of there's also a anyone but Amazon kind of movement, right? Folks looking out how can they collaborate in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And protect some of the leverage, but. Let's talk about Amazon. Despite all the folks they put to work, 26,000 unfilled job openings for actual humans.
Yeah, let's talk about humans for a second.
Yes, please.
So core to Paul and the other co-founders' vision was to keep the human at the center of the job. So there's a job that needs to be done, and while there is absolutely an opportunity for automation, inevitably a human is engaged in that process. So the focus on putting the human at the center of the workforce is really a core part of our vision. So the fact that Amazon, one of the most highly talked about companies in terms of automation and robotics, still has nearly 30,000 human worker jobs, just paints an incredible picture that humans are essential to the job that needs to be done. And how can we make sure that we're building technology and processes that keeps them ergonomically fit, safe, and in control of the job that needs to be done?
Yeah, I think there's just another point on that subject is that there's a perception of it's got to be either you do automation or you focus on the human. What we're seeing is that there's kind of the fact is we need all of it. That there's so much demand out there and there's so much pressure on logistics to do it better and faster and more effectively that we really need to press kind of on all fronts right
Yes, great point. All right, so Paul, I want to bring you back in here. I love, that's some of the best things I've heard this week. And again, my week is not starting today. It's going back. It feels like we're on day 6 or 7. But the focus on the human element, that is such a wonderful element to this business that you founded. Speak to how important that is to you.
Yeah. So in the founding team, a part of the team is like me, coming from the industry. The other part comes from design thinking, user-centric design, and like set up IDEO, one of the biggest consulting firms in this sector in Germany. And this is why it's really strongly integrated in our DNA. So each time we have something new, like also the Mark display, we go out with very, very rough prototypes. They look super ugly. They break quite easily.
Super ugly, really?
Yeah.
Bubblegum and duct tape versions.
That's a highly technical term, Paul, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we take whatever is the fastest. So they definitely don't look nice. And then we go and give these to our users, and they test it, and we get instant feedback. And then we go back, work on a week on it, and then we go with the next iteration, with the next prototype. And so we have around in Munich, we have a couple of customers like BMW, also some warehouses, where we can just come and go as we want, and we do this for multiple years now. And they have some of them have a stockpile of prototypes, so sometimes we need to go and get them all back and give them proper hardware actually. But it's super important, and that like everyone in development, in the sales team, like they all live up to this philosophy and know how to observe the user and to figure out what is like getting feedback and what is actually the right solution for the user. And so we all spend actually quite some time on the shop floor and observing users and doing interviews.
Okay, all right. So before we leave the workforce segment, because I want to talk about IoT, which of course is front and center, not only for organizations and business, but for consumers. Anything else we're missing when it comes to workforce?
Oh, there's probably a lot we're missing,
right,
but
yeah.
Good point.
we could probably have a whole another session just on that.
Whole series, right?
Exactly.
All right, so then let's switch over to IoT, because I really want to there are no shortage of acronyms and buzzwords, right, in this landscape we're in, right? So let's talk about the modern day, the more sophisticated way that we're applying IoT, not just going back to my dog food example. I'd love to have an instant connection so that when we take the last scoop out of the dog food container, that it sends a message instantly to whatever third-party e-commerce folks we get it from, and it's on my doorstep without forgetting for 3 days, right? But that might not be the most sophisticated application of IoT that I get a sense that y'all are more involved with, right? So Tracy, I want to start with you. How do we get the right level of keeping a simple solution in mind, but to your point of getting the most bang for our buck? How do we get that right?
Sure. So I love what you said earlier in the podcast around let's keep the simple things simple and deal with the mountain later. That's exactly what we're trying to do today with the combination of the cloud solution, the emulator, and the display. We knew from observing our customers that they needed more access to information in real time quickly.
Yep.
So employing the whole Internet of Things construct, how can we get information from the cloud to the worker quickly, efficiently, simply? And then how can we take data from that worker more quickly to the cloud so that the people looking at the operations and the supply chain could glean information and data from that transaction?
Timely manner.
Timely, quick, simple. So actually, to tie back what Justin said too, people are looking for a platform. They're looking for something that will grow with their business, not just solve a problem today, but the problem that they visualize 3, 5, 10 years from now, but they need something today.
Right.
So employing IoT as a mechanism to start collecting data, to start understanding information, and to start delivering information to people who need it in a contextual way is where we believe the payoff is.
You keep talking about context, and I think that is such an important in this era that we live in, where we're getting overwhelmed with data, right? We're probably sitting here in the last 35 minutes. I bet y'all have gotten plenty of email, social media, texts.
Sure.
you name it. But that context is so important, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and that to that point about data, right? Because we've been playing in the space now for a number of years, and there's just so much data out there that's just interesting. You can't do anything about it. Changing that number, you can't really tell how it would affect the operation or efficiency. So again, to her point,
right?
It's about data in context, and sort of the new expectation is that when you're going to make a leap in technology, or you're going to make an improvement, you have to have something keeping you accountable to say, I will receive a benefit for it, and quantify that. So,
Paul, I want to bring you in on this kind of along the lines of what Justin was just talking about. There's a great phrase, I'm going to butcher it, but basically you want to do it with your people. Because if you plan without your people, you're doing it to them versus doing it with them. And what I envision, as y'all kind of describe the initiative and the innovation things that you are rolling out, is you are doing it with the people. And not only is the business from an efficiency standpoint and a lot of other standpoints gaining, but the people are gaining, the workforce is gaining. And speak to that a little bit, Paul.
Yeah. So in this regard, we have a couple of customers that are looking into not only handing out smart devices to the white collar, but also to the blue collar workforce, because they say, we want to integrate them better. We want to give them regular updates, access to email, to intranet, all these things that they maximum have like a terminal standing around somewhere, and so. The push, from smartphones into the industrial sector, also has a lot of benefits for the worker. So, for example, if you want to get updates about a health insurance policy or something, you can just use your device, and anytime you can get regular updates. And you don't have to go to some special place to obtain this information.
Really?
So this is something we see with a couple of customers. It's not completely rolled out yet, but in some factories they're already testing this out. Yeah.
You're kind of speaking to the art of the possible that we alluded to earlier. All the kind of different things that information that be conveyed with context that would be beneficial to all those that wear it.
I'd love to build on something Paul said, and it was about the terminal. So one of the things that's really important and that goes to the context part is untethering your workforce from a stationary location. The job getting done is somewhere else. It's always someplace else on the shop floor, someplace else perhaps where your customer is. And if you can move your frontline workers to where the job needs to get done with the information they need in that spot by untethering them from a stationary terminal, imagine how much more quickly you're solving a problem or addressing a customer need.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, you had stationary computers and screens and everything attached, for example, on an assembly line in a warehouse. That's impossible nowadays. Even an assembly line where you run a car production a couple of years, it's in constant change. So you really need to untether the information that you want to transfer to your workforce.
That's such a great word. You can almost see it, right? Untethering take place.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm tempted not to say this because there's so much more about IoT we could talk about, but I do want to continue our broadening journey here. Any last words before we leave IoT and before I give you all $1 million question?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. Good. I've got your permission, Tracy. I thank you very much.
Yeah. Ask Paul first.
Okay. All right. So, Paul, we'll start with you. So when we leaving the world of efficiencies, workforce, and IoT, and there's a great Venn diagram somewhere right there between those three. But and you're looking at the global supply chain management landscape we're in. Kind of beyond those areas we've touched on, what sticks out? What's on your radar more than others? And it's really an open-ended, open canvas question. A lot of folks we talk to on this show that they go down the leadership path, or they go down workforce path, or they go down technology disruption and all the things that means. Talking about cliches, right? What are you tracking more than others right now, Paul?
Yeah. So, that's quite a broad question. So we discussed already a lot about our philosophy. So the human worker is always in our center. So automation is interesting to us, but always like to integrate the worker, because we think there's like the worker is so capable of adapting to a new process, or if something goes wrong, that is super difficult for automation. Nevertheless, the automation has its place. There's some very boring jobs to do or heavy lifting, so that's great. And beside that, so I'm looking into our roadmap.
Yeah.
So we are looking into like mature technologies and making them more accessible for the workforce. So we're not doing necessarily like extreme high-tech like things that will play a role in 5 years from now, but more something that is mature, maybe in another sector, like for example in the consumer sector, and then apply this technology to the industrial sector.
You know, what is unmistakable for anyone that listens to this interview is how within the DNA of your company, the workforce and the human element is front and center, is at the core of that. And that is a very refreshing element in this automation age, right? Which is a great thing. But as each of y'all have addressed, a lot of times the human element kind of gets forgotten about or becomes less of a priority. Okay. Same question, Justin.
He took my answer. No, I think to build on that a bit, I think what we're really focused on is the integration, not just on the system side of the technology, but integrating it into a user's day. How do you get the users to adopt quickly, right? And how do you lower the barrier of entry for them to be able to do their job better and more efficiently, and not fight the technology? How do we help it do their job better?
Yep. That's so important, right? Yeah. Kind of going back to that notion of not doing it to the workforce, doing it with the workforce. That's where the secret sauce is. Yeah. Okay, Tracy, I want you to weigh in here. What are you tracking more than others right now?
What am I tracking more than others right now? It's the customer journey. So I'm obsessed right now with really understanding across the 4 verticals we mentioned earlier in the podcast: healthcare, retail, travel and transportation and logistics, and warehouse distribution. Yep. Is understanding what's the job that needs to be done, what's the effect of all of this amazing technology and innovation that's happening, and how are our companies responding to it. So the better we are at understanding the impact of all of this innovation is to the companies that we're working with and the partners we're coming to market with, the better we are at helping to get the job done in a better, more efficient way with the human in the center of it.
Yeah. So anything but technology for the sake of technology.
Absolutely.
The latest bells and whistles.
Fight
for
the innovation bias.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. But the appropriate application of practical application of technology is kind of what I heard there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's build a solution with the human, not adapting the process for the technology. Let's focus on the human.
Okay. So I want to make sure our listeners can connect. But before we go to kind of as we start to wrap up the interview, this is day 1 of MODEX. I think y'all are. What booth y'all each are at the same booth? Right?
What booth are we at?
I want to say that you are at.
Hold on. I'll look it up.
We're at the best booth.
1580, I want to say. I'm close. Well, we'll come back. We'll edit that out.
1908.
1908. So, MODEX booth 1908. What else? As you're walking over here, because I think that is in either Concourse A or Concourse B. Anything get y'all's attention as you're wandering through the desert to find us here at 4970?
Well, it did, and it was the abundance of robotics and automation.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one, because there were some really big robots.
Yeah, which again isn't bad. It's much needed, and Paul said it. There's jobs that need to happen that these robots and the automation is absolutely appropriate for.
Right.
But again, 30,000 jobs out there for frontline workers in one company.
Yeah.
Right. So humans are a part of this as well.
Yes.
So what stands out is the amazing innovation and opportunity to further adjust the supply chain.
Yep.
But how do we keep it all connected?
Yeah. I'm with you. Well put. Okay. Well, Anything else? I mean, is that
Same thing. And kind of when I look at all of those systems and you look at sort of the classic way of getting those systems integrated where they would all be their own little silos or their own sort of separate integration teams and separate projects for a customer. Like I look at that and say, okay, well, how could we simplify all of those systems and get them to speak to one another and then give context to a system that tells the user where they're gaining and where they're not?
Yep. Excellent. Okay, well, let's make sure our listeners can follow up with each of you and your two organizations and learn more, and if they can connect with you individually.
Sure.
I'm sure there's lots of folks that may want to compare notes based on what they've heard here today. So for starters, Paul, how can folks learn more about ProGlove?
Yeah, so first of all, we have a lot of user stories on our website, proglove.com. So, for example, on the airport, in the warehouse, like everywhere, really diverse applications, and also how these customers got the maximum out of our solution. So these are pretty interesting to watch. That is what I would recommend as a starting point.
Outstanding. And I know you are also active on social media as well. Tracy?
Absolutely. So ProGlove.com, obviously. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Tracy Hansen. And then on Twitter, it's @ProGlove. So love to hear from you guys. Tweet about us. Come check out the website, and feel free to connect with me.
Love it. Okay. Justin?
Same deal. Yeah, our website, staylinked.com. And they can reach me on LinkedIn, Justin Griffith. And if they have any questions or anything, info@staylinked.com. It's a great place to start. Yeah.
And stay tuned. I know we're going to be hearing a lot more about what the three of you and your respective organizations are up to. Big press release coming out that will probably already have dropped by the time this episode hits. Congratulations on all the growth thus far.
Thank you.
You know, who knows, that company you mentioned earlier, this might be the chapter 2.
I hope
in
so.
terms of
I know it.
Well, thanks so much, Tracy Hansen and Paul Günther with ProGlove, Justin Griffith with Stay Linked. We'll have to have y'all back on maybe later this year and see how things turn out.
Thanks,
Great.
Scott.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So stay tuned 1 second. So to our audience, be sure to check out our events and our webinar tabs at supplychainnow.radio.com. A wide variety of upcoming virtual and in-person events, ranging with partners at EFT, Reuters Events, Automotive Industry Action Group, the Georgia Logistics Summit, MODEX, which we're here throughout the rest of the week, much more, supplychainnow.radio.com. If you can't find something, shoot us a note to our CMO, Amanda at supplychainnow.radio.com, and we will serve as a resource for you. Y'all set a high bar for this first interview at MODEX, so the folks coming up behind you, they've got they're going to have their work cut out for us. So thanks so much to our audience. Again, you heard from ProGlove and Stay Linked here today. Stay tuned for the rest of our coverage of here at MODEX in Atlanta, GA. Be sure to check out other upcoming events, replays of our interviews, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. Find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. On behalf of our entire team here, Scott Luton wishing you a wonderful week, and we will see you next time on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.